Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Veil of Sound. And today we can say hello to one of my favorite artists when it comes to making progressive music in a realm which is usually not really known for its complete and utter progressiveness. We can welcome A.L.N from Mizmor to our little show. Um, can you shortly, for all those people who are watching or listening to us right now, and who don't know what Mizmor stands for, can you just quickly explain what the term means?
Of course. Thanks for having me, by the way, and for the generous intro there. Yeah, Mizmor is the Romanized version, and I'm pronouncing it in a very English way. I think it's actually pronounced Mizmor, like you said, but Mizmor means psalm in Hebrew,
Mhm.
and psalm or melody, prayer. Um, which is the origin of the project. As an ex-Christian, I started making this music as prayers to God as I was struggling with my faith and felt like I was writing dark, embittered, sorrowful psalms to the Lord, and so that's where that connection comes from.
Okay. Thanks for like putting it in a nutshell. I think it's like very nicely and quickly explained. For everybody who now expects me to ask A.L.N a lot of deep, religiously philosophical questions, you're in the wrong place. He did that a lot. If you want to know more about the roots of Mizmor and about the connection to religion, there are loads of really, really good interviews out there where A.L.N spoke about it. And I think we can turn our attention to other things because a week ago he released a new EP, and it's once again, as usually the case, I completely fell in love with it. Um, Wits End, it's called. We'll come to the title in a moment, but I like the fact that there are some different sounds on it, and I guess that was a clear-cut decision on your side.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure exactly which sounds you're referring to, but on
We'll
the
get to
EP,
that.
yeah, you'll hear some spoken word, um, lots more clean guitars and sort of clean cymbal swell kind of percussion, which I've done before, but it's a little bit more of a focus here. And then also the real different element for most of my listeners will be the B side of the album, which is just an ambient song.
Which is awesome. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Um, and that's also something that I want to come to because I love I like I also like the title track because I love the introduction to it and I love the spoken word passage and I also think that one of the most important sentences on the EP is in that first spoken word passage. We'll get to that, but I really love the musically different B side. Um, what influenced that song in particular musically? Was there any kind of influence where you said like, okay, I at the moment I'm listening to this and I really like that?
Um, Probably subconsciously. I didn't feel in the moment that I was striving to achieve some sort of sound that I had a reference for. Um, but I've been listening to ambient music a lot in the past couple years. Um, One of my favorite ambient artists is Brian Eno. I've been listening to him almost nonstop during the pandemic. I find it very calming, but also very interesting sounding, sometimes heavy. And it's just a genre of music that I've been interested in more and more over the past few years. And one of my big influences was my really close friend, Andrew Black, who I did a collaboration album with in 2020 called Dialethia. Um, and working with him kind of made me more comfortable with composing a song that has no drums in it, for example. Also, just kind of thinking about music a little bit differently from the production side of like, well, what if we take this acoustic guitar and we run it to tape so it sounds warbly and old, and like just little touches like that that are more common approaches in the ambient or electronic world. Um, so I credit him for greatly influencing me, or at least encouraging me to kind of uh, be more open to this form of my artistry, which was really helpful to kind of step outside of my box a bit. So I feel like the B side of Wit's End is in a lot of ways just kind of the next step from Dialethia of me wanting to make uh, ambient sounds, but in a still very Mizmor sounding way.
Mhm. It's interesting that you mention ambient because I had imagined that it would be electronic music, definitely, but I had thought more in the veins of Radiohead, especially the Kid A album, and also Sigur Ros.
Mm,
But it's interesting that you mentioned Brian Eno. It seems as if he's one of those people that everybody comes back to, right? He's like one of those people whoever is into ambient, Eno is always mentioned. Whoever is
yeah.
into rock, most of them come back to Bowie at a time or whatever. So very interesting. Are there generally any kind of musical influences for Mizmor?
Oh yeah, definitely. Probably my favorite doom metal band that I'm constantly referencing, who I think is just the heaviest and most evil thing in the world, is Burning Witch. So I'm constantly, you know, writing riffs and then thinking like, well, would this band think that's heavy, sort of a thing. Um, for black metal, I really love and have been influenced by a lot of the older Wolves in the Throne Room albums, and also Cold World has become a big influence. And then another genre that I feel really influenced by is funeral doom in specific. So for me, bands like Worship and Shape of Despair are Merkstov are bands that I kind of reference in my mind a lot. It's all very subconscious, you know. You kind of just you listen to all this stuff and it uh, just gets into your brain and then starts to shape the music you make. I don't really set out with a goal of making quote unquote this sort of album, but
Mm.
yeah, as far as general influences go, there's a handful of bands that I'm constantly listening to over and over and over again, even though I've heard their albums millions of times, thousands of times.
When I look at Wit's End, it's a very interesting idea. You know, to be at one's wit's end. Can you maybe explain when was the last time that you yourself were at your wit's end? Not like going into too personal of a level, but when was it that A.L.N. didn't know where to go?
Yeah. so so for me, with the record with Wits End, there's kind of a multifaceted meaning there. Yes, it is about my mental state, feeling personally at wits end. It's also about how I see humankind right now, where we're going as a people. Feels like we are journeying further and further away from using the tools of reason, logic, and science, and more in a superstitious, faith based direction. Um, and it's also about the great filter in the Fermi paradox. And my take on that is kind of that consciousness is this great filter and it will annihilate itself before life gets off the planet. And so these three things in my mind are all about wit ending. Excuse me.
No problem.
As for the personal level, I'd say the last time that I was probably at a loss and kind of at rock bottom and didn't know where to go. It was probably, around the time that I started the project, which ironically enough was probably the beginning of wit for me and the end of faith. But when I think about that feeling, that comes to mind.
Would you say that the way that you described it is Wits End also kind of a political record? Does it have a political stance?
I hope not. I mean, I can't. Everything kind of does. You know what I mean? Like, unfortunately, a byproduct of the society we live in right now is that when I say that I believe in the value of the scientific method, that sounds political to people because I'm saying that I don't respect religion as much. So I guess in that sense, sure, but I'm not trying to be political. I actually think that this is something that transcends politics. It's just about the way that you approach truth and facts and how you vet information and spread information. And I wish that wasn't political, but I understand that for a lot of people it will be. And that's just kind of, I guess, exactly what I'm talking about. We have this sort of reactionary, uh, you know, response
Yeah, we're living in a
automatically.
time when everything is political without wanting to be political. And I think what you mean is that, whatever we say is being interpreted from both sides of the spectrum, to be either, to unfortunately be either for or against them. So, like, we're
Hmm.
very close to what Bush said. Either you're with us or you're with the others. Um, yeah. You know, Also thinking about it from on an abstract level. You've already mentioned that it's like for you this time or the last moment when scientific sanity prevails.
I really, I remain cautiously optimistic that, because I think if you zoom far enough out and look at at culture, we are moving in a direction, in a progressive direction, in terms of medicine and technology and morality, rights for different groups of people and whatnot. Lots of progress has been made over the past 100 years to 500 years to 1,000 years. So I love that, and I hope that continues. I think that the internet and social media have really changed the way that we uh, consume and spread information, and they kind of polarize us inherently and radicalize us into a sort of echo chamber. And this is concerning to me. And one possible kind of science fiction idea to entertain that could ultimately, at some point down the road, lead to more and more destruction, as it kind of removes you further and further from reality, or at least brings everyone into this fractured, not shared sense of reality. Um,
Unfortunately, yeah.
so on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, everything has slowly been getting better throughout time. And on the other hand, I'm like, well, we live on a planet with limited resources. Something fucked up's going to happen eventually, and it kind of seems like we're at the beginning of it. I know it seems like that to every generation, but I think there are a couple things that are special about where we are now that could mark the beginning of the end. But it's just a fictional, just a speculation from me.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I, even saying it, I notice how much of like difficulty the term hope already implies when talking about the moment we're living in, and
Mm.
also like wits end and whatever you want to say. Um, you know, Something that struck me was the question: how can we, as people, cope with an unfortunately not shared sense of sanity and not shared um, values, or like a lot of people that are at their wits' end, and how can we cope with that as a society? Is your music meant in any way to be something to turn to for others?
Absolutely. It's 100% that for me, and always has been, and that's why I started the project. And it's been a really humbling experience over the years to learn that it can be that for other people too. Um, and so I'm just, I love that that happens, and it encourages me to keep sharing what I do, because at first when I started the project, I wasn't even going to share it with anyone. It was really just for me. But the fact that it can positively affect other people's lives, even on a very, very small scale, encourages me to continue to do what I do and make it public. Because I find a lot of emotional catharsis through the music I make. Some of that's just straight physical from beating the drums and screaming my head off. But there's also the more immaterial sense of, like, getting thoughts and feelings out there, instead of shoving them down, letting them have space, and putting them in an art form. And then it kind of allows you to let go of them a little bit, start to grow and heal, and you can look back on them and reflect on them and whatnot, but you don't have to carry them around at the front or back of your mind anymore. So that's kind of the mechanics of what I do, and I'm so honored that other people get value from it.
That is something that I also witnessed when I saw you perform live 2.5 years ago. It struck me that you're like one of those acts which makes it possible for people to have these cathartic moments without inflicting any kind of negative emotions onto others, and I think that is a rare thing, something that you don't often see in heavy music. Amen-Ra does that for a lot of people. One of my favorite bands, Ulfa, does that for a lot of people, and I would count you in the same category. That is a very, very interesting idea, that you are seeking and providing catharsis at the same moment.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I always want to try to not just talk about Mizmor, but also look at other things. And one of the things that I am looking at right now is your very, very nice studio. I know that you have offered to produce other people's work in there, so the question must be, how is it going so far, producing other people's records?
I love it. And I want to do more and more of it. I haven't produced very many records, but I've done a handful. Not all of them in here, but the process of being an extra set of ears, an objective third party coming into someone else's music, and just being a sounding board and providing your opinions and trying to help them make the best record possible is so satisfying and fun to me. I love it. And I've done, in my studio in Albalith, I've done one record so far for my close bud I already mentioned, Andrew Black. He wrote a one-man black metal record under the name Litha. It's not, you can't hear it anywhere yet, but I produced, recorded, and mixed it here, and we both think it turned out awesome. I'm really pleased at the results. I just got back from producing a record in Mexico for a band called Abyssal, a funeral doom band, and that was also, it was just such a positive experience. It was so wonderful. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you want help with your music, hit me up, because I love doing it.
Well, you should be living in the Pacific Northwest, or pay A.L.N to come to you.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Would you be willing, like, would you be willing to produce any and everybody, or are there certain things where you say like, okay, musically don't go into that direction, or mentally don't go into that direction, like certain things that people should have or not have?
That's an interesting question, and honestly, I don't know the answer. I think I would have to cross that bridge when I come to it. I want to say that I'm open to anything, but I don't really know how effective I would be at like producing hip hop or pop, say, because that's just not really my wheelhouse. But if an artist was making that kind of music and they genuinely wanted, and they knew about me and the music I make and what I do as a producer, and they genuinely wanted me to come and do their music, knowing how dark and fucked up I'm going to try to make it sound. If they really wanted to collaborate like that, I mean, that could be cool. So I feel like I'm open to anything, but I'm sure I could get some requests that I don't know, I'd just give the fuck off rate to, right? Well, this is how much it would cost. Oh, that's way too expensive. Okay, yeah, never mind. Like a Christian artist or something, for example.
That is exactly what I was asking. Like I mean, I'm very sure that you, for example, know Tooth and Nail Records, right?
Of course, I grew up on
back
that
in the day, like, right?
Yes.
Would you be willing to produce a band like, let's say, Haste or Juliana Theory or any of those old Tooth and Nail Records, like bands?
I don't know those artists in particular, but I don't think I would help anyone try to advance a religious message with their music.
Okay.
If they were a religious artist and I had no idea and the listener has no idea, then okay. But if it's clear, if I can figure out that what your message is with your music and it's that, I don't think I would help advance that in the world.
Would there also be topics where you say like, okay, if you ideologically or so are into this direction, then cooperation will not come to mind?
Can you say the question again? Sorry.
Like, are there like thematical, apart from Christianity, are there records or artists or genres where you say like, especially artists? I was thinking like you are working with you are making doomy black metal, right? And we both know that a lot of black metal bands have problems with like getting their marbles together and seeing that stuff that happened 80 years ago is over and should be over. Bands like Ngwa, or from a personal background like Burzum or whatever, you wouldn't produce guys like that, right? Satanic War Master and what are
because no, definitely not. No. Yeah. Anyone that has hateful, harmful, dangerous, shitty, regressive ideas that they're trying to promote with their music, yeah, obviously not going to work with those kinds of people.
That obviously also wouldn't work with your idea of music as a catharsis, right? Because it wouldn't give any kind of catharsis.
Yeah, not for me. Unfortunately, it's probably giving them great catharsis, but in a way that I think is definitely a net negative for society.
Yeah, and creating a hell of a bed of a bridge right now. But I said I'm looking at a few beautiful things, and I am looking at that wonderful cover of yours for the Wits End EP. Is it just my imagination, or is there some kind of artwork connection between Wits End and one of your last things that you did, looking through? Because
I have never thought about that.
This looking through a certain shape onto the other side.
That's interesting. No, that had not crossed my mind. There's definitely a connection between Wits End and Karen and Yod, in that they're all Polish surrealist artists. But I'd never thought about that observation you just made. That's interesting. Unintentional on my part.
You've already mentioned that you've been working with a lot of Polish artists for Yov and for Karen, and now for Wits End. Why the Polish?
They just
Apart from, I have to say, I go to Poland every year. I love the Polish, and I think they're one of the nicest people I've ever met.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is, but they just so happen to produce artists that paint in a style that I really love. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people that aren't Polish do it too, but you know, Zila Slabiczynski, Mariusz Lewandowski, and now Justina Kozaczak, I'm drawn to their art. It all has this thread that runs through it. I'm sure Baczynski is probably the one that started that, and they're very heavily influenced by him and a few others. But it has this really obviously surreal vibe to it. You know, like which I love. Like my favorite painter growing up was Salvador Dali, but they do it in this incredibly dark kind of existential way that I also really connect with. So it's not that being Polish is a requirement or anything, but it's just kind of coincidentally worked out that way that like this culture, you know, from this nation in this style of painting, they do this thing that I just really love for some reason. So it's kind of started to shape who I seek out. You know, I found Justina on social media coincidentally and looked at all her stuff and was like, wow, that looks like all the stuff I really like. And it's a new person to work with, and it kind of looks a bit different, you know, but it has the same feeling. And so that's just how it's kind of worked out. They just have this gift with color and darkness at the same time. I don't know, it's so cool.
What also struck me is that on all of the three records, there is always a kind of a human figure as some kind of measurement, and like always there is like a person that you look at which could be you, and at the same time you would be facing something enormously bigger than you. Just like you said, it's very existentialist. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Is that something that you say like, okay, if possible, I would like to continue that with my next future endeavors?
That's a good question. I also don't know. I am tempted to say that I would like to grow and push myself to not do the same thing over and over again. That I might consider a different art direction in the future. Certainly open to that. And if
one also has to say that you already did when looking at the first things, the first covers for Mizmor stuff, and then starting with Yo, that has already changed. There has been a change.
That's true.
But you are thinking of another change of direction?
It's possible. It's always possible. And if the right thing doesn't click, then it will. I know it'll look good to continue in this vein. You know? I wish I had a better answer, but I just won't know until I'm there.
It is a very personal and therefore perfect answer. Thank you very much. But when we're talking about Mizmor, over the last couple of years, you know, diving more and more into the things that you've released, it struck me that there are some like constant musical relationships that you seem to be like nurturing and that you seem to grow with. One of them is your relationship, your musical relationship with Emma Ruth Rundle. Is that true? How did that come up?
Yeah. She is my partner's sister. So she's practically my sister-in-law.
But you've been working with Emma not only like because she's your partner's sister, but I guess that there's also some kind of musical connection, right?
Yeah, of course. We love each other's music. I mean, it's no surprise that her music is very widely and well received in the metal scene because even though it's doesn't use screaming and huge big muff guitars and all that shit, it's still very heavy sounding thematically and very sad. So I love her music. She loves metal. She likes Mizmor a lot. She loves my music. And I think as artists, like, we're doing a similar thing where we're kind of airing our trauma out into the world and trying to heal from it.
Hmm.
And so we have a sort of kindred spirit there.
It's
And
interesting.
we've never actually done a musical collaboration, but we did a book together. She often uh, takes photos of me, or like the Dialethia album cover, she took that photo. So
Mhm.
there's always some sort of, yeah, like you said, relationship that we're nurturing with our work together. Um, Even if it's just in the background, sometimes she's a constant helpful resource for me, even if I'm just bouncing ideas off her, like, hey, what do you think of this? You know, like, it's nice to have her in my life as someone that I trust artistically to talk to and sometimes to work with.
Mhm. Another person that you constantly work with is MSW.
Yes.
For lack of name, MSW, or also known as Hell. Um,
Yes.
for all our readers, those two guys work very much together. Could you describe what you do for each other's project? I know,
Yeah.
but
Well,
maybe not everybody knows.
totally. Well, it all started like when we were like 14. We've played in bands together since then. Um, Eventually, those bands kind of became heavier. We were in a band together called Sorceress that was this sort of stoner rock metal kind of thing. Um, and then that kind of devolved and broke up, and he started Hell, and I started Mizmor. But yeah, we're fated to always work together. For Hell, I did a handful of songs on the first album vocally. This was before he was comfortable doing his own vocals, so he brought friends in to do vocals on the songs that otherwise is him playing everything. So I did vocals on Hell 1, and then we kind of had some time apart. I was in Germany studying the Bible, and which is the experience that ended up leading me to start Mizmor. When I came back from Germany, I started Mizmor after a little while, and we reconnected. Um, and at that point, he asked me to be in the live Hell band. I came on doing drums, and then I'd also perform the songs from the records on the vocals. I could do my vocal parts while playing the drums, to kind of make that sound a little bit more accurate to the record in the live setting. And then after a few years, I decided to start doing Mizmor live. He was an obvious choice to be in the band. He came on as the drummer. Um, and we've done a split together, a Hell Mizmor split in 2014. And yeah, we just always play music together. He's a great friend. He's a great musician. We know each other's style really well. So I trust him a lot to just kind of, hey, here's the song. I know you'll get it, and you'll do it right. And so yeah, that's that.
We've already indirectly mentioned that you live in the Pacific Northwest. Do
Yeah,
you think that this region has some kind of influence on your music?
of course. Yeah. um, the big thing is the gloom. It's cloudy and rainy for like 8 months out of the year. We really only get 2 months, like July and August, of like really nice weather. A little bit of September, a little bit of June, um, and then just a whole lot of clouds and rain. Also surrounded by big, beautiful pine trees. Um, it just has a mood, you know. Uh, I'm sensitive to seasonal depression. It does sometimes, like when the fall rolls around. At first, I find it really exciting and inspiring, and then after a few months, it's a little bit more depressing and hard to get through. Um, I should probably move somewhere sunnier, but I've just always lived here, and like, you know, uh, but yeah, I think it definitely it creates or it encourages you to be in your house and try to get some of that sadness out. So I think it has some really important ingredients that go into making dark music, just kind of intrinsically. Other parts of the world have that too, of course, but here in the States, that's probably Oregon and Washington are probably the mini Scandinavia of the United States, if you will.
Well, don't say that to the Minnesotans with all their Ericssons and Andersons and everything else.
Oh man, actually, good point. That's the true Scandinavia. I take
Yeah,
that back.
and they also
But
have the
but you
worst
but you know
football
what I
team, the Vikings.
but you know what I mean. It's very gloomy and
Totally know
forested
what you
over
mean.
here, and we have lots of black metal bands. You know.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, that's true. I mean, like, it's interesting, Minnesota. The only band that I really know from Minnesota is Husker Du, right? And Prince.
Yeah, yeah.
I would
False
be
was
hard
from
pressed.
Minnesota.
What?
False, they're a black
Yeah,
metal band.
yeah, true.
That
But
that's like the one I can think of from our
see,
scene that's over there, like yeah, making the music.
but like, imagine asking asking you or me, name 10 bands from the Pacific Northwest, and we would be like, only 10.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, you said that it's that you suffer from like periodical or seasonal depression. Um, is that then also a time where Mizmor helps you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I suffer from more generalized depression, but it does get worse the longer I spend without seeing the sun. It builds up more and more and more.
Yeah.
And so I do find often in the fall and winter that it's time to make music. Um, it I feel more inspired then than I do
Yeah.
on a nice summer day when I just want to go be outside and drink a beer and see friends and stuff. So yeah, definitely.
I was just thinking what Mizmor would sound like if you lived in Southern California. I don't know if I
Yeah,
would.
that's a good question. I have no idea.
Um, would
Some
also
bands do
see.
the whole desert doom thing pretty well, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But again, pressing me for like 10 black metal bands from California would make my life a little bit more difficult.
Yeah,
Is Mizmor then also some kind of a journal,
hundred
like a
percent.
diet?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Especially the way that it started, before I even had any intention to show anyone else. That's also why the first album or so of music I made had no lyrics on it. Uh, Only the logo in Hebrew that you had no idea what you were looking at, and my initials, because it was such sensitive material that I didn't want people to actually know what it was about. I wanted people that liked metal to listen to it and connect with the emotion of it. And I thought that if people knew that it was like a struggling Christian losing his faith, they would think that's stupid, because most people in the metal scene are already like rooted in their atheism or satanic imagery and whatnot. You don't. It's not as common to get this frail, struggling approach to the question of God and Christianity and religion. It's more decided in people's minds already. So I was definitely trying to be more mysterious at first, because it is just a journal, absolutely. And now I know that people can relate to that, and I don't feel self-conscious about sharing what I'm going through anymore. But it's definitely a journal, yeah.
Sorry to in some way contradict, but I think that in some ways your personal experience is something that at the beginning made Mizmor really interesting for a lot of the black metal community, for a lot of the metal community in general. Because just like you said, most of us are atheists or have some kind of difficult relationship with religion and with God and everything. And then to see somebody struggling with that, losing his faith in some ways, I think that, and that is also something that I love about Mizmor, it is a very, very authentic thing.
Yeah.
Highly personal, very authentic, and really believably presented. So that is something that
Well,
I
I appreciate
like
that.
about that. And the next question, I mean, like when we're talking about a journal, was it, I guess it was also some kind of coping mechanism for yourself, right? Like,
Oh yeah, definitely. I had to make this music to get all those thoughts and emotions out.
one last thing before we come to our quickfire question, and we have talked more about religion than I would have expected to. Totally fine. But I have one question to religion. Karl Marx, one of the last great German thinkers, once said that institutionalized religion is like opiates for the masses. Would you agree nowadays?
I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. I think at the core of mankind's tendency to be superstitious or religious is the desire to have answers to the big cosmic questions, to know where you're going to go when you die. I think death is the biggest thing there, and to have comfort knowing that it doesn't end and you're going to go to a good place. And you know, this tendency to impose intention and meaning onto just natural occurrences, to give you this sense of God's plan for your life or your tribe, or the environment around you. And then you can, learn that and try to appeal to that and have some sort of control through your prayers and actions over being on the right side of how that's going to unfold, because you've got this answer, you have this belief. So I think, yeah, at the bottom of it, it's just us comforting ourselves. So I think that statement has aged well.
Probably did. Our infamous quickfire questions. Let's start with something philosophical and then get more primal.
So I'm supposed to just answer this as quickly as possible? Is that the idea?
If I think with the first one, I think you can give like a sentence or two.
Okay.
Let's start with a philosophical one. What would you prefer? An eternity without knowledge or a mortal end with knowledge?
A mortal end with knowledge. Absolutely.
Comes very decidedly. Candlemas versus Saint Vitus?
Candlemas.
Mm-hmm. Sabbath or Led Zepp?
Black Sabbath.
Okay.
Love both bands, but Black Sabbath.
Yeah, I guess that with all the bands that I'm going to list now, you're going to love both.
Yeah.
Celtic Frost or
said,
Bathory?
Yeah. Bathory.
Interesting. I would have guessed because of the avant-garde thing, you would have chosen Celtic Frost. Wolves in the Throne Room versus Vow?
Oh, don't make me.
I do.
Don't make me do it.
I do.
Okay, well, because I have a really close personal... I love both bands. Love them. They're both completely crucial to Mizmor and inspiring me in the early days. Would not be here without either of those bands. So much love for both of them. But I have deep, close personal relationships with Thou. So they're heroes and they're also friends. So I'm gonna have to say Thou.
Not as seriously, but Townes Van Zandt or Willie Nelson?
Oh, that's another really tough one.
Really? Okay. You
Yeah,
choose
I love
first.
both of those guys so much. Like Towns Van Zandt is so like sad and gritty, and Willie Nelson is so like uplifting
Smoking
and
a lot of weed.
fun. Yeah, yeah. Oh man, I love them both. But if I had to pick to live life with only one of them, I would pick Willie Nelson.
Yeah, I think he would make a much nicer companion. Yeah, that's true.
Yes, absolutely.
Sumac versus ISIS.
You know, I have to admit, I'm not well versed in either of their discographies.
Good. Not a bad thing per
So
se.
very uninformed, uneducated decision, but I would pick Sumac.
Okay. Burning Witch versus Sun.
Oh, easy. Burning Witch. They've got drums.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Seattle versus Portland.
Oh, well, I have to choose Portland. They're both great cities. I've spent a lot of time in both, but obviously I'm a bit biased. I live in Portland. I love Portland. I love Oregon. So, yeah, Portland.
Nirvana or Alice in Chains?
Oof. Very tough. I like both bands, but I'm gonna say Nirvana. They were more influential to me.
Interesting. And the last one, beer versus wine.
Ah, man, what a good question. I love both. You know what? I'm gonna say both on that one. Sorry. I'm gonna break the rules and
You're
just
totally
say both.
fine with. That's totally fine. So, thanks for being here with us, and thanks for also coping with the little technical problems. It was
Of course.
really, really interesting. And yeah, it's January. You can still start writing another record for November or December.
Hey, that's true.
So, have a good one and take care.
Hey, thanks so much.